This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Okay, there we go. Okay. How you doing, Ira? You doing all right?
You can squeeze me in wherever you want. I understand it's all about the sponsors. I'm doing good. Oh, it's really interesting this season how it's almost feast or famine when I come on your shows. Either the Heat are incredibly terrible and we're talking about losses to Denver and the Clippers and the Lakers, or they're on 4-game winning streaks. It's like there's been very little middle ground. But you know what? Through all of the bad, there has been more good, and the Miami Heat wake up today on Friday for our Acura Pembroke Pines report in first place in the Eastern Conference. So whether you want to say cream rises to the top, whether you want to say they found their footing, they're a good team, and this is where they should wind up being for most of the season, right at the top of the battle in the East.
$11-5 is exceptional, Ira. I don't care what anybody
with this
tells
schedule,
me.
with this schedule,
Yeah,
when they're just coming back from a brutal, 5-game, 9-day trip, heading back on the road for 9 more again. And this is important, Heat fans, no matter what even happens on this trip. They are getting so many of these bad road games and bad road situations out of the way. Again, there will be a stretch in March, Big O, when the Heat play 10 of 11 at home. So even if the record's a little sideways, even if they're 3rd, 4th, or 5th, and you're worried, oh, they're in trouble, no, they're in really good shape, because at the end of this race, they'll be running on that inside lane.
I'm with you, man. And last night, when I saw that Tyler Hero's not playing, I'm a little nervous because I'm worried about the juice off the bench. But damn, Gabe Vincent, man, nice job by the young man.
Yeah.
He found his stroke last night. That was nice. See, that's been... Caleb Martin has had his moments.
Yes.
Dedmon's had his moments. Now we see Gabe Vincent having his moments. PJ Tucker is the ultimate definition of 3 and D. So, it's just all these little elements. It's nice to see that their complementary players are truly complementary.
Yeah, I'll give you something interesting. I'm driving home last night, and I usually do my pregame debriefing with Eric Reed when he's driving home to Boca. I'm heading out to Weston. And we actually had this debate. We were talking over who was the bigger contributor last night, Gabe Vincent or Caleb Martin. And Big O, if we're having that debate and they're both contributing, that says plenty. The Heat find the right players. And Gabe Vincent last night wasn't just about his three-pointers. It was about the diversity of his offense. It was his first career NBA dunk. It was getting in the lane. He said, look, Tyler was out. He gets downhill. I had to step in. I had to try to get downhill. When I was arguing with Eric Reed, I said I thought Caleb Martin had the bigger game. His athleticism and the way he makes plays that spark you is really impressive also. And again, it's like we said, in our earlier Acura Pembroke Pines report this week and our show with Clay Ferraro the other day, the Heat are getting it from so many different places they can afford to rest someone. Look, we were sitting there in pregame in the media room trying to find this Tyler Hero wrist injury. And some of the guys were poring over the video, trying to figure it out, and David Ramil and Wes Goldberg. We couldn't find it. And I still think Spoelstra's being very prudent about spotting his players. Look at this week alone, Big O. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, and Tyler Hero all have had days off, and the Heat have won every one of those games. So I think Eric Spoelstra is being smart. This is not like the last 2 seasons that were shortened. This is going to be a full 82-game marathon. He's going to keep his players fresh. He's going to play prudent. And the entire focus of all of this is this. You and I started the season talking about the Heat big 3 of Lowry, Butler, and Adebayo. It's a big 4 right now. And when you have a big 4, you can sit one of the guys and still get plenty of production. The Heat got it last night, season-high assist from Kyle Lowry. They got the second consecutive 30-point game from Bam Adebayo, and rather from Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo filled the box score. So they have enough guys that, hey, take a night off. We'll be fine. And all of this is without Markieff Morris ever since that scuffle in Denver a week ago Monday.
And let me tell you something. What we cannot overlook, and you just look at this roster, the Heat with the 13th and 14th picks may have picked all-star caliber players in Bam, and obviously Tyler is headed in an all-star direction. Whether he's sixth man or not, he's playing like he deserves to be an all-star if he continues on this trajectory. And then You had Duncan Robinson, who they find off the scrap heap,
Right.
who ends up becoming one of the 3 best 3-point shooters in the NBA. The only guy you could say for sure is better is the dude, in Golden State, who is
Who's
just
killing it right now.
God bless,
But
man.
you know what, Big O? On this upcoming road trip, it starts in Washington tomorrow on Saturday. They then go to Detroit and play this past draft's #1 pick, Cade Cunningham. They then go to Minnesota and play last year's draft #1 pick, Anthony Edwards. And what it shows you is it's more than about winning the lottery. The Heat never wins the lottery. The Heat never draft at the top of the lottery. Dwayne Wade, to a degree, was an exception there, and they still find a way. So whether it's in football, in Tank for Tua, or other sports where you think one guy's going to be a savior, it's not. It's organizationally, how do you get these young pieces and how do you develop them? Big O, the Miami Heat played 12 players on Wednesday night against the New Orleans Pelicans. Here's a fascinating stat. 8 of them were undrafted.
I know.
Think about that.
Well, that's the part that I didn't get. You didn't let me finish here. Gabe Vincent is helping.
Yes.
Max Strus is helping. Now they brought up the Garrett kid. We'll see what he does. Caleb Martin. I mean, and then, we'll see what happens with Yurtsevin down the line. Because obviously see, the beauty about the Heat is that all of a sudden, whenever you see a young guy that's off the street, you can't just dismiss it like, oh, yeah, whatever, he's a guy. No, you have to now look at it because these guys know how to find people. So now you're hoping Yurtsevin turns into something. But that's my point. It's not just about the 2 draft picks. It's also about all the other players that are undrafted that are contributing. You saw it last night when you and Eric are arguing about 2 guys that are undrafted and helping you out because their scouting department is doing an outstanding job where other teams have to go buy older veterans to kind of fill out the roster. These guys are finding young people that might have a future.
And their development department. There's 2 parts of that, Big O. There's the scouting staff and the development department. I'm not so sure the development program with the Heat, and that includes Octavio De La Grana, Eric Glass, Anthony Carter, Chris Quinn, and their coaches there. I'm not so sure they can't take any ball of clay and fashion it into a contributor, because that's really what they've done. I mean, look at it this way. Caleb Martin was with the Hornets. They let him go. Max Strus was in the Bulls organization. They let him go. Gabe Vincent was in the Kings organization. They let him go. Omar Yurtsevin was in the Thunder's organization. They let him go. So I think it's the development department also where other teams go, this kid can't play. Let's move on. The Heat go, hey, let's be patient. Let's get these guys in the gym every single day in August and September and continue to work with them, even in Sioux Falls, where there's nothing but basketball up there, and turn them into something. That's the difference. So scouting is the first part of it, to find the diamonds in the rough. But the second part is to turn those pieces of coal into diamonds.
And by the way, speaking of that, then that leads me to, you didn't have the same kind of offseason last year. You didn't have the same kind of season. This year you had the off season, and you're getting the results because you were able to put in that work in the offseason.
Spot on. I mean, look, even from a Tyler Hero, a draft choice, late lottery, he had an offseason. Oh, my God, he's a different player. Gabe Vincent had a knee injury he was rehabbing. Now he gets the full summer. Even a Bam Adebayo with the full summer with the Olympic team, picking up little tips from Draymond Green and players like that, and then coming on in that floater and that jumper we saw last night. Yeah, Heat players evolve. Very rarely will you talk to me about a Heat player and go, man, Ira, he's gotten stagnant. He's not any better. There's not that upward curve you like to see. And that's what this team does. And I know it's hyperbole to talk about development because it's the players as much as the coaches wanting to be receptive and them wanting to be receptive, Big O. It's one thing to teach. It's another thing to have people listen. And every player, including when we spoke to Gabe Vincent last night, that's what he said. They've worked with me. They've made me better, which makes me willing to want to be better also.
You have covered all kinds of Heat teams. You've covered all kinds of Pat Riley teams. One of the things I was talking about, I believe it was yesterday in one of my rants, was that this Heat team, and we haven't seen this in a few years. Maybe we have to go back to the Big Three. This is one of those type of teams that actually takes more pride in their defense than their offense. And I think we haven't had that in the last few years here with this team. We've had moments where they've played decent defense,
Right.
but this is dog-like defense. This is the kind of defense that we've seen, in the past with some Spo teams and many Riley teams, that they got down and dirty, and they have more passion about playing their defense than almost their offense. You agree
Yeah,
with
that's
this?
a really good point, and I'm working actually on a piece on that in one of my notes. Bam Adebayo, after last night's game, said, look, we're not happy. They almost shot 50%. They got 15 three-pointers, and it was really interesting what he said. We're making up for it with our athleticism. We're making up with our intelligence of knowing when to switch. We'd rather not run around like chickens with their heads cut off, but we can, because they have that closeout speed. So he wants to see it at another level. He said, hey, it's been good, but it can get better. It needs to get better. So they're always working on that end. Take Jimmy Butler, what he did last night. For everything he did, Spoelstra was most marveling about his steals and the way he can shoot the gap and the way he had this uncanny vision where Spoelstra says there were times he turns to his coaches and he says to them, how did he do that? How did he get that? We saw that with Dwayne Wade and his steals, with LeBron and his steals, with the great closeout defense of the team you mentioned, whether it was even a Ray Allen or a Mike Miller, they were out there quickly on shooters. That's the next thing. They're still evolving. It's early, but the Heat have a nice baseline for their defense, but even they expect more.
How much do you think this becomes an influencer for years to come? Because having PJ around and having Lowry and having Butler, and Bam already has that disposition. So that's just part of his DNA as it is. But this is the influence that you're leaving on Tyler and Duncan and Gabe and everybody else that's on here, and Strus and everybody. How much of that influence do you think helps for these young guys to see these seasoned veterans that have some of them? They're, Kyle Lowry, his odometer might have gone around already once,
right?
And yet the effort and the defense is there. They roll over on his ankle one night, and he's back the next night with the triple double. You know what I mean? The kind of work that they bring to the table, will it be infectious enough that it will leave a lasting impression on these young guys?
Yeah, and there was another name you didn't even mention we were talking about constantly after Wednesday's game, Udonis Haslem, and the examples he's setting in practice and what he does. And you're absolutely right, Big O. That becomes infectious, that they say, hey, then they see this also. Matter of fact, it's interesting. The guys you pointed to are all long in the tooth. The PJ Tucker, the Kyle Lowry, even the Udonis Haslem. But you know what they see? If you defend, you last in this league. PJ Tucker's lasted in this league on his defense. Udonis Haslem, even taking out the last 5 years and putting him back at 36, lasted as an effective rotation player because of his defense. It's a really good lesson for guys that, hey, it's nice to collect the money now, but if you want to collect the money when you're 30s, you better have that defensive disposition. And so you're right. Half the team are dogs, half the team are puppies, but they're learning to be dogs. They're learning to be like the Rottweilers that UD has.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Washington, I guess the rematch tomorrow night. What are you expecting from that game?
I'm expecting a different Wizards team. They were without Spencer Dinwiddie only for rest, so he's not injured. He's had a pretty good season. He's done a lot of damage against the Heat when he was with the Nets. There's a chance that Daniel Gafford, their big man, will be back. They'll have more post play. They didn't have last night. There's also a chance that Tyler Hero is back and that the Heat are closer to whole than maybe we've seen since the early stages of the season. And I would take this Heat team at whole. I mean, take everyone who played yesterday and you throw back in Tyler Hero to that mix, you're in pretty good shape. And the good thing, is this. They have a day off before that game, but they have 2 days off after. So it's not like you have to rest someone. You have Sunday. You can sit in Washington, D.C. You have a practice at Georgetown on Monday. You can get back to work. So I think the Heat are going to go for it. I think a split with Washington would put them on equal footing with Washington. I think they want to make a statement. We've seen this before.
I agree.
They want to knock teams from their perch. They went into Brooklyn this year with Harden and Durant, even without Irving, and they made their statement. They want to do the same thing with the Wizards. They want to, in Milwaukee, the victory they had at the start of the season against them, they want to systematically pick off the top teams in the East and say, okay, you might have thought who you were. We're going to show you who you are.
I haven't watched as much of Gafford this year, but when I saw him in Chicago, he's one of those cats that I saw and I said, damn, I would love to see the Heat coaching staff grab him because he's got some skill sets, man. There's something about
size.
that Gafford kid.
And he has
Yeah,
that size. He reminds me a little.
Riley will love
Yeah.
that part. Yeah,
Yeah, Jamal. It reminds me a little of Jamal McGlure at Jamal McGlure's
Yeah.
best or whatever. That was an absolute steal by Washington to get a guy like that for pennies on the dollar last
Yeah.
season. So they're a different team with him also. But you know what? The Wizards got a big game from Bradley Beal, and it wasn't enough. And if you can beat the Wizards at their Beal best, you're also in pretty good shape going into the rematch.
And by the way, they're a decent 3-point shooting team, so I know that they're beating themselves up for that. But you know, you were going up against a decent shooting team, so they're going to make their own shots. The fact that you beat them by 15 and without Tyler, you know, I'm really impressed with the balance from this
and
team.
again, another one of these, you built the 18-point lead in the third quarter and you held on to it. We didn't see that against the Lakers. We didn't see that against the Clippers. We almost didn't see that against the Jazz. Like Eric Spoelstra said, you learn from those moments also. You don't think a game is over. You play it to the finish, and that's what they did. So those were really good lessons learned. You and I talked about it earlier in the week. Yes, they had a 2-3 road trip, but I think there were really valuable lessons during that road trip.
And by the way, something that really hasn't reared its ugly head this year with the Heat a lot is the third quarter.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Because that's the depth of talent. That's because at the end of midway through the third, when you're subbing out, it used to be, let's just survive this.
Yes.
Now you've had the Tyler heroes come in. Now you've had other guys come off the bench and keep you afloat. And that matters a lot also because you need to rest all of your 32, 35, and 36-year-olds.
I'm looking forward to it, man. This season's between them and the Panthers, Ira. They're making the winter fun, man. I mean, last night.
And you know what?
Was amazing.
If you step back from the press row and you walk behind, you see everyone has the Panthers on also. We have our stats monitor and we have our Panthers game on also because you got to enjoy the winning.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of winning going on between the Panthers and the Miami Heat. Follow him on Twitter at Ira Heatbeat. Catch his work there at the South Florida Sun Sentinel. And, of course, you can catch him exclusively here all week long, twice a week, with the Acura Pembroke Pines Miami Heat Report and that exceptional show, the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint Show, every Wednesday. Next Wednesday, by the way, I think next week it's Friday.
We're going to go next Friday because we want to get nice and filled up on the stuffing and turkey and then just come here totally languid for an hour. You know what? It'll be toward the end of the trip. We'll have a better view whether the Heat won the games they should have against Detroit and Minnesota. I'll be joining you on Monday, a little different schedule for our Acura Pembroke Pines report. So you'll still get us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. Little different schedule, but all the Heat info you can use.
It's a beautiful thing. Ira, as always, thank you, my brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, and we didn't fire our athletic director, so it's been a good week for the Heat. Thank you.
You got it. There you go. The great Ira Winderman and the Acura Pembroke Pines Miami Heat and NBA report.
This is the